My name is Lucas Penner. I'm 51 years old, and I've spent the last 2 decades building a life in Asheville, North Carolina. One spreadsheet, one decision, one small, smart step at a time. I'm not the kind of man people write about or talk about. I fix things. I predict problems before they explode. That's what I do as a systems consultant. But it turns out I missed the biggest glitch of all inside my own home. I was standing at the kitchen counter, coffee cooling in my hand, when my phone buzzed. It was a video message from Sienna, my wife of 21 years. She was laughing, glass of champagne in hand, camera tilted playfully. Behind her was a hotel suite, luxurious, bright, unfamiliar. Definitely not her sister's modest place in Santa Fe, where she said she'd be for the weekend. She flipped the camera to show a diamond bracelet. Elegant, expensive. Thousands of dollars at least. "Don't worry," she said, that tilt in her voice I used to love. "You'll land on your feet." I did. Then she smiled like she'd just closed a deal. I set the phone down and looked around the room. The sleek furniture she'd insisted we buy 2 years ago. The stainless steel kitchen we remodeled last spring. The framed photos from trips I now realize she never seemed fully present on. I didn't feel rage. Not yet. What I felt was alignment. Like something I'd quietly suspected had finally clicked into place. Sienna and I met at 33. She was all energy and persuasion, pharmaceutical sales rep with polished nails and louder dreams than mine. I was more grounded, quieter. She used to say we balanced each other. "You build, I live," she'd smile. And for a while that worked. We moved fast. 6 months from first date to marriage. Bought our first home when interest rates bottomed out. I maximized our retirement contributions. Invested in growth stocks. She brought charisma dinners with potential clients, spontaneous weekend trips. But 5 years ago, the cracks started. I found a charge for $4,800 at a boutique jeweler in Atlanta. Not her birthday, not our anniversary. "It's for my mother," she said. But her mother never wore new jewelry. I didn't argue, I just watched. Late work nights became more frequent. New clothes, new friends, and out-of-town fitness coach who texted her late. She always had explanations. I always gave quiet benefit of the doubt. But I began to prepare. When I signed a long-term consulting contract with BlueNet Consulting 3 years ago, I restructured our financial setup. On paper, we had one joint retirement fund. But behind the scenes, I created a business entity, an LLC. I diverted 70% of our holdings into accounts tied to that entity. Sienna never asked, never even noticed. 8 months ago, I saw a pattern. Withdrawals from our joint account, $400 here, $1, $200 there, then $500 for event services. "Online shopping," she said when I asked. "You're always working. I need things to make me feel not so alone." Last month, she asked if we should update our retirement beneficiaries. Her timing wasn't random. That night, I saw her scrolling through her phone, smiling in a way she hadn't at me in years. The bracelet, the hotel, her laugh, it wasn't a betrayal anymore. It was a strategy, and it was already in motion. So I acted. I walked into my home office and unlocked the drawer I hadn't opened in months. Inside was a folder. Bank statements. Investment reports, signed documents, divorce filings half complete, waiting for the moment. I updated the forms, finished the spreadsheet, then I called the bank. "Yes, Mr. Penner," the agent said. "We were just about to contact you. There's been an attempt to liquidate your retirement account." "I didn't authorize that," I said calmly. "Then we'll begin a fraud investigation immediately. We'll place a hold on the account." "Please do." By the time I hung up, I had set the end of our marriage into motion, not the emotional end which had happened months ago, but the legal final one. The next morning, I emailed the final divorce petition to my attorney, Nora Mendez. Then I made another call to Harvey Tran, a forensic accountant I'd worked with on a corporate audit years ago. "I need financial tracking," I told him. "Clean, court ready." 3 days later, Sienna's messages started. "What's going on with the account? Why can't I access our money?" I didn't reply. Her tone shifted fast, from confusion to panic to anger. Dozens of texts, voicemails. You can't do this to me, Lucas. But I could. And I was just getting started. It was 7:02 a.m. when the doorbell rang. I had just set my mug on the kitchen counter when I saw her through the side window, Sienna wrapped in a designer coat I'd never seen before. Mascara, smudged eyes wild. She didn't wait for me to open the door. She shoved it wide and stepped in like she still owned the place. "What did you do?" she snapped. "Why can't I access our retirement funds?" "The bank says something about fraud. Fraud, Lucas." I kept my voice calm. "I reported unauthorized activity," I said, "which means the account is now frozen pending investigation." "Unauthorized," she laughed, but it was hollow. "I'm your wife. I have every right." "No, you don't. Withdrawals over 10,000 require dual authorization. You forged my signature." Her face faltered, a flicker of fear, then calculation. "You can't prove that." "The bank can. And I have your video. The one where you tell me you're leaving while showing off a bracelet worth more than our kitchen remodel." She went quiet for a moment. Then her tone changed instantly. She stepped closer, softened her voice. "Lucas, this is all a huge misunderstanding. I didn't mean for it to come across like that. I was just angry, emotional. I didn't think it through." "You thought it through plenty," I said, backing away. "You packed your favorite clothes. You've been shifting money in small increments for nearly a year. You had time." She tried to grab my arm. I stepped back again. "Lucas, whatever you think happened with Derek." "I filed for divorce," I interrupted. "The papers will be served later today. From now on, speak to me through your attorney." Her mask fell. "You're nothing without me," she hissed. "I built your image. I got you those clients. You were just a boring IT guy until I made you look like someone." I almost smiled because it was so predictable. "And yet I somehow managed to restructure our finances without you noticing," I said. "Amazing what a boring man can do." She narrowed her eyes. "There was $950,000 in that account. What did you do with the rest?" "There was $211,000 left when you tried to drain it," I corrected, "which the bank has now frozen. The other $739,000 in accounts under my LLC. You signed off on the paperwork, but you never once logged in. That was your mistake." Sienna went pale. Then, in a blur of fury, she threw her phone. It bounced off the wall, landed on the floor with a dull clatter. "You think you've won?" she spat. "Derek has money, connections. I don't need you." "Then you've landed on your feet," I said quietly. "But you'll be doing it without my retirement. And depending on how the investigation plays out, maybe with a record." She left an hour later, slamming doors, muttering threats. I changed the locks that afternoon. Then I waited. In the days that followed, she tried every tactic. Tears, voicemails begging me to reconsider, emails from her lawyer accusing me of hiding assets. I forwarded every message to Nora, no replies, no emotions, everything by the book. Meanwhile, Harvey called. "We've traced roughly $102,000 in misappropriated funds," he said. "Nearly all pulled from your joint accounts over the last 11 months. He sent over spreadsheets neatly categorized by date and amount. Designer stores, boutique hotel stays, gourmet restaurants, spa retreats. And then there's this," Harvey added, turning the page. $26,500 in transfers split into 16 different deposits wired to an unfamiliar account. "It belongs to Derek Voss," he said. 44. Regional Sales Director at Sonara Wave. Recently promoted. I stared at the folder. My mouth was dry. "There's more," Harvey continued. "He has a pattern. 2 prior cases, both involving romantic relationships with women in medical sales. Both ended with them financially compromised and him walking away clean." My stomach twisted. This wasn't just betrayal, it was method. Derek didn't just happen to Sienna. He chose her, groomed her, played her. Harvey flipped another page. The first transfer to his account happened 3 months after he joined Sonara Wave. The same time Sienna's sales territory expanded. That lined up. I remembered her excitement, new clients, new targets, the innovation wave she called it, medical meets sound, late meetings, weekend conferences, all just business. Now I saw it for what it was in you think she knows?" I asked. Harvey paused. She might, but maybe not the whole picture. Either way, she was funneling the money into his hands. With the evidence in hand, I met her up at the office desk. Her expression shifted as she read Harvey's feelings. "This gives us leverage," she said. "You now have a strong case for disproportionate division of assets, possibly even criminal charges. What if we use it to recover the stolen funds?" I asked. She looked up. "You'd be willing to negotiate?" "If it gets most of the money back and keeps me from watching her spiral further, yes." She considered that. "Let's make the first move. Quietly. If she refuses, we escalate." I nodded. "And what about him, Derek?" "We can file a formal complaint with Sonara Wave's compliance team," she said. "Let their HR dig around." "Good," I said. "But not yet. Let him think he's safe a little longer." I didn't sleep that night. Not because of pain, but because of purpose. I wasn't planning revenge. I was planning a rescue. Of my life. My future. My name. It started with silence. Sienna stopped messaging for 2 days. No texts, no voicemails, nothing from her lawyer either. But I knew that wouldn't last. When you take away someone's access to control, especially financial control, they always come back harder. And she did. On the third morning, her name flashed across my screen again. "We need to talk, please. I made a mistake. You don't know everything about Derek." I didn't reply. I forwarded the message to Nora as I had with all the others. But part of me knew something had shifted. Later that day, I received a message from Sonara Wave's HR department anonymous tip line confirmation. The email was cold and formal, but it confirmed what I'd hoped. Derek was now on their radar. I didn't have to accuse him outright. I just gave them a thread to pull. And it unraveled faster than I expected. 2 days later, Sienna showed up at my office building. I saw her waiting near the parking garage as I exited, hands tucked into the sleeves of a gray coat, eyes puffy, makeup smeared. "Lucas, please, just a minute." I didn't stop walking. "He's not who I thought he was," she said, falling into step beside me. "Derek. He lied about everything. He told me he was divorced, that he'd help me start over." I said nothing, just walked. "He's used other women before," she added. "I found out from someone who used to date him. She reached out on LinkedIn, said she saw a photo of us, said she recognized the pattern." At that, I stopped. "You just found out?" I asked. She hesitated. I suspected, but I didn't think he'd actually—" Her voice cracked. "He told me to transfer the money, said it was for business investments, that we'd be partners." I nodded slowly. "We already know, Sienna. My forensic accountant traced the transfers. Every dollar. Every timestamp. You moved over $26,000 into his account." She blinked, staggered. "You knew. For weeks. And so does our lawyer. And the bank. And by now, so does his employer." Sienna swayed slightly. For a moment, I thought she might faint. "Lucas, I didn't," she whispered. "I didn't know how deep it went." "Maybe not," I said, stepping back. "But you knew enough to laugh while you walked out of our marriage on video." Her lip trembled. I didn't know how to come back from it. "You don't," I said quietly. "You move forward. And you own what you did." That evening, Nora called with an update. "Sonara Wave suspended Derek Voss pending investigation," she said. "They've flagged several internal reports from his previous territories. Seems you weren't the only one doing homework." "What about the other women?" I asked. "One of them has agreed to submit a formal statement to the DA's office. We'll have a pattern, which means if we file criminal charges, it won't just be your word." And for the first time, I felt it. Not anger, not grief. Clarity. The divorce hearing was scheduled for the following Tuesday. I wore a dark gray suit, clean lines, nothing flashy. I didn't want to show up looking like I'd won. I just wanted to look like I'd endured. Sienna and Derek sat together at the respondents' table. She looked smaller somehow, more fragile. He looked annoyed, tapping his foot, jaw tight. Their lawyer opened with a claim that I'd hidden marital assets and withheld communication in bad faith. Nora let him speak. And then she rose with a calm that could crack stone. "Your Honor," she said, "we have submitted documentation of systematic financial misconduct, unauthorized withdrawals, forged authorizations, and direct transfers of joint funds to a third party. That third party, Mr. Derek Voss, has been involved in at least 2 prior incidents of similar behavior with partners in adjacent industries. She handed the judge a folder. Bank statements, signatures, messaging screenshots, video evidence, all neatly stacked. The judge flipped through the pages with methodical pace. Then, without looking up, she said, "Mr. Voss, this court is not tasked with prosecuting you directly. But given the evidence presented, I am referring this case to the district attorney's office for further review." Derek shifted uncomfortably. Sienna's hands went to her mouth. The judge continued, "In the meantime, all disputed assets will remain frozen. And, Mrs. Penner, I must remind you that any further attempts to move or conceal funds may result in civil penalties or worse." The room was quiet except for the sound of Derek's attorney flipping frantically through their notes. That evening, I went home and packed up the last of Sienna's things. Not out of spite, just to make space. I boxed up photos, scarves, her favorite cookbooks she hadn't used in years. I left them by the front door and changed the locks again, this time for good. Later, I stood on the balcony of my condo, same skyline, new view. The city looked different now. Not because it had changed, but because I had. A week passed. Then I received a letter from Sienna's attorney. A shift in tone. A proposal. She would return the $102,000 in full. She would sign over her interest in the Asheville property. In return, I would drop all civil pursuit of fraud. I asked Nora, "What do you think?" She smiled faintly. "It's a surrender. Take it. You've already won what matters." I signed the agreement the next morning. No gloating, no satisfaction, just a quiet sense of recovery. I had spent 21 years loving a version of someone who never really existed. But I was done mourning that illusion. Now I was building something real on my terms. Some downfalls are loud, chaotic, messy, undeniable. Others happen in silence. Derek Voss's unraveling began with a polite email. The DA's office confirmed that a formal inquiry had been opened. That part didn't surprise me. What came next did. 2 more women came forward. One was from Denver, a former marketing lead who'd briefly dated Derek during a joint pharmaceutical campaign. The other was from Seattle medical equipment rep, just like Sienna. Each had the same story: charm, confidence, big promises, small deposits. Then, slow siphoning. The playbook never changed. But now, for the first time, it had a name. Pattern of financial exploitation with intent to defraud. That's what the investigators called it. Sienna's lawyer reached out again. This time it wasn't about our divorce, it was about immunity. "She's willing to testify," Nora said, reading the email aloud to me. "Full cooperation in exchange for reduced exposure to fraud charges." I didn't respond right away. Nora looked at me gently. "This could help you get closure. And it might help the other women too." "She's not doing it for them," I said. "She's doing it to save herself." "Maybe, but the result still matters." I nodded, eventually, and I gave my consent. The deposition took place in a neutral conference room downtown. I didn't attend. I didn't want to see her read from pages of regret. I'd heard enough of her voice to last a lifetime. But the reports came in. Sienna was thorough. She laid out the timeline, the gifts, the encouragement. The first time he told her, "We're investing in our future." She didn't realize the account was only in his name. She thought they were building something together. She cried, apparently, said she'd been used, that she'd lost everything. Some part of me believed that. Another part didn't care. By the time Derek was formally charged, Sonara. Wave had already scrubbed his profile from their website. His corporate email bounced back. HR conducted an internal audit. Rumor had it 2 managers had already resigned over their role in approving shady expense accounts. None of it made the news, but in our circles, word traveled fast. The man who once strode through conferences like a minor celebrity was now a ghost. His mugshot circulated in niche industry forums. The charges: wire fraud, financial manipulation, identity misuse, 3 felonies and counting. I received a letter from one of his former victims. Handwritten, no return address. "Thank you for not staying silent," it began. "We all thought we were crazy. Or naive. or just not worth the truth, but your case made us feel seen. Like maybe for once he wouldn't walk away clean. I folded the letter carefully and placed it in my drawer. Not for revenge, for reminder. Back at home, the final stage of the divorce played out like the quiet ending of a long storm. No shouting, no further stunts. Sienna's restitution payments began arriving monthly checks, small amounts scheduled down to the dollar. Her signature at the bottom looked different now, smaller, almost nervous. The Asheville house was legally mine. Nora had ensured that with firm precision. The judge's final ruling, given the evidence of financial deception and third-party interference, the division of assets will heavily favor the plaintiff. It was done. In the weeks that followed, I started cleaning the house for real. Not just the counters and drawers, but the traces of the life we'd built together. Her favorite espresso machine, donated. The glossy magazines that used to clutter the living room, recycled. That framed photo from Maui where she'd been texting someone during our anniversary dinner, gone. I kept one photo, though, tucked inside a box in the attic. The two of us from our first year together. Smiling, young, hopeful. Not as a keepsake, not out of longing, but as proof that I had tried. That once I believed. Then came a knock I didn't expect. It was Nora. She handed me a folder. Final summary, she said. All filings closed. All assets recovered minus incidentals. You're in the clear. I opened it, page after page of order and resolution. Then she hesitated. There's something else, she said. I got a call from an advocacy group, Women Against Financial Abuse. One of the women from Derek's case gave them your name. I raised an eyebrow. They want a quote. They want you to speak about how you handled it, how men can be targeted too. I leaned back. I hadn't considered that. I'm not sure I'm the spokesperson they're looking for. Maybe not, she said, but maybe you're the one they need. That night, I walked through the quiet rooms of my home. And for the first time, I didn't see ghosts. I saw potential. The kind that doesn't rely on someone else's ambition, or image, or approval. Just space. Clean, steady, earned space. 6 months later, I stood on the balcony of my new condo high above downtown Asheville. The city glowed beneath me in early evening light, buildings tinted gold, the ridges of the Blue Mountains softened by haze. A different kind of quiet now. Not the silence that follows a betrayal, but the one that comes after a storm has passed. When you've cleared the wreckage and found somehow that the sky is still there. I took a sip of tea, not coffee this time. I'd let go of a lot, and oddly, caffeine was one of them. Somehow I didn't need it anymore. The divorce had finalized 2 months earlier. The ink dry. The court orders fulfilled. My name, my home, and most of my savings were intact. Sienna's restitution checks continued arriving with mechanical consistency, never late, never early. I didn't read the notes she sometimes attached. Nora had advised I keep things minimal, professional, detached. It suited me. Last I heard, she'd moved back to Santa Fe. Took a mid-level position in a smaller pharmaceutical company. No more flashy events. No more top territory bonuses. She kept a low profile now. There were whispers that Derek had offered her a plea deal, tried to drag her down with him in exchange for leniency. She refused. Whether that was guilt or self-preservation, I'll never know. He was awaiting trial. 3 victims. 1 clear pattern. And now digital evidence compiled and archived thanks to Harvey's diligence. Justice, I'd learned, doesn't always come in the form of a gavel slam or front-page headline. Sometimes it's quieter. A freeze on accounts. A revoked license. A name scrubbed from an industry's memory. My consulting business grew during that time. Word got around that I'd handled a personal crisis with remarkable discipline. That's what one client said. What they meant was I hadn't collapsed. Ironically, people trust you more when you've been broken and didn't bleed on the floor. I started seeing someone. Her name was Elise. A project manager at a client firm in Charlotte. Smart, grounded, sharp with numbers, and clearer with boundaries. We weren't rushing anything. After everything, I didn't need fireworks. I needed clarity, stability. The kind of relationship where silence meant comfort, not distance. She knew my story, all of it. I told her on our third date, over dinner in a small bistro overlooking the river. I've been married once, I said, and I've been betrayed once. I'd prefer not to do either again, so if that scares you, I understand. She didn't flinch. Instead, she reached across the table and said, then let's just build something honest. It wasn't poetic, it wasn't dramatic, but it was real. I kept one photograph from my marriage to Sienna, just one. It sits in a drawer, not on display. Not because I long for the past, but because I need to remember who I was when I believed in forever. To remember that trust is not a promise, it's a practice, a pattern, a daily act. And that when someone breaks it, the lesson isn't that love is a lie. It's that love, like any structure, needs maintenance and oversight. And when the foundation cracks, pretending it's fine only makes the collapse more violent. One morning, I received an envelope. Inside was a formal statement from the DA's office. Derek Voss had entered a plea agreement. He would serve a reduced sentence, but with restitution demands and industry disqualification for a minimum of 10 years. The women he'd hurt, they were there in the courtroom. So was a representative from the advocacy group that had contacted me months ago. I wasn't. I didn't need to be. My role was over. The moment I chose to protect myself, I had done what mattered. People often talk about closure like it's a door that slams shut. I don't see it that way. For me, closure was the quiet walk through my house after changing the locks. It was packing the last of Sienna's things with steady hands. It was forwarding one final email to Nora and never looking at the reply. Closure was choosing peace over fury, structure over chaos, clarity over confusion. It was choosing me. One evening, Elise and I went hiking just outside the city, a short trail, nothing ambitious. At the top, there was a view trees stretching out like a living sea mountain stacked like old memories. She asked me if you could go back. Would you do anything differently? I thought about it for a moment. No, I said, not even the bad parts, because they taught me something I might have never learned otherwise. She nodded, not pressing. I smiled, not needing to say more. I came home that night and opened my journal. It's something I'd started again just for myself. On the first page I had written, I wasn't broken, I was recalibrating. This wasn't a breakdown, it was a reprogramming. I didn't lose everything, I reclaimed what mattered. The retirement accounts now fully in my name, consolidated, tracked, secure. The business stronger than ever. I took on a mentoring role, training younger consultants on more than just tech. On ethics, on preparation, on reading people. The life I thought I'd built with someone else. I now understood it was never about them. It was about who I became after the loss. So here I am, Lucas Penner, 51 years old, standing in the home I chose, loving someone I respect, and finally, after everything, breathing free.